It's a new championship, a new season, and of course, new rules to follow everything. Hello, and welcome back to GT4 Racing here on RCI TV. And with you throughout the entire series, I'm Jesse Lee with Tim Peck and Christian Stricker in the booth with you for this season. Very different than the last time we had GT4s on track. Gone are the two sprint races every single weekend. We are doing one endurance style race with a driver change, and it's going to be an excellent season, I can already tell. Welcome in Tim Peck to this brand new season. We're back.
We are back indeed, and like you said, there is a big change in how we're doing the races now. Instead of having two sprint races, which are half an hour each, we'll be having the long 80-minute endurance race with a driver swap in the middle. Of course, these cars are not driven by one, but two drivers this time. And you do have to change a driver in the middle of each race, so we will see how that plays into things. We only have one split here, and it's a mixture of people from Pro to Am, so we've got a nice range of skill levels as well, all of which will be hoping to prove themselves on track. Now, I'm just checking how many races we have in this championship. I believe it's another 6. It is! We've got another 6 rounds in this championship, 3 of which are British tracks. We'll be starting here at Silverstone, and then for round 2 we're off to Alton Park. Round 3 will be at Spa in Belgium, and then we're back over to Britain again for Brands Hatch. And then we're going to Japan in round 5, where we'll be at Suzuka, and then round 6 we'll be rounding up the season with Kailami. So there's a lot of action to come, and you're not going to want to miss any of it.
Well, we may be in the UK, but the weather is anything but British. A beautiful day to do some GT4 racing. 27 degrees on the track, 19 ambient, albeit ever so slightly chilly in my opinion. I know a lot of the British people will disagree with me on that. No wind to speak of, and nary a cloud in the sky. And we have 3 different classes for you this season. Pro with the white background, silver with the silver background, and red with the AM background. And what's most interesting about that to me, Tim, as qualifying starts, is we have more pros than any other category.
Yeah, I'd say that is fairly interesting. I was expecting more of a mix, to be fair, but I think the fact that a lot of these drivers have probably come from the last season as well, and they're mostly teamed up. I don't know how it works with your teammates. So obviously, if you're a pro and your teammates are silver, does that just show up as pro overall? I don't really know how it works. But I imagine most people will have their pro as the first driver, so that might be why we see quite a lot of pros in the cars at the moment. Personally, what I'm quite surprised about is the much more wider variety of cars this time. Obviously, in the last GT4 Championship, there were a lot of BMWs and a lot of Aston Martins, and then we had a couple of different manufacturers in there just sort of dotted around, but nothing too different. But here we have 4 Alpines currently out on the track and 2 Ginettas, which personally I'm very excited to watch how they manage the track.
Yeah, I was talking to Triple R prior to the broadcast today. They were also surprised with the amount of different cars that were on the track. The Ginetta has caught their eye, and I think it's a fan favorite for nearly everybody as well. The Alpines, of course, the big surprise. They won't do too well here at Silverstone, I don't think, with all the straightaways, but certainly there may be a few rounds that do sort of favor them ever so slightly. We have the odd Chevrolet as well. This championship, of course, was meant to be 2 different splits at one point, pro, high silver, and then another split with low silver and AM. That did not amass, as we could fit all the teams on one server, so we elected to do that. We expected 33 cars here today. We got very nearly that, if not the full 33 today. And even though it's a brand new championship, there were a few sign-outs after all.
Yeah, it's definitely been interesting, and I'm actually quite glad that we managed to bundle everyone in, because it means obviously all of these drivers will get to see themselves back on the broadcast afterwards, and I think it's also going to make for a lot of interesting fights. I mean, can you imagine just having one of those AM people start much higher up and seeing what they can really do when the pressure's turned up on them, and seeing just how long they can hold off some of the pros and silvers for? I personally think that that could be highly entertaining. And I mean, you say the Alpine would struggle here. I was actually just about to say, from watching the practice, the Alpines look pretty confident out there. I think all 4 of them were in the top 10 at the end. So we could see some surprises here. Personally, like you said, I'm a huge fan of the Ginetta. The fact that it's the only car here that has a right-hand drive is just amazing, and I think it really does show the difference in some of the tracks. At Silverstone, the Ginetta I think is quite a nice one to drive. Being on the right-hand side, it just makes some of those corners a little bit easy in a way. Going to some other tracks, so I imagine at Suzuka later on the season, the Ginettas might struggle a little bit with some of the more technical corners because it makes a huge difference. And I'm sure those of you at home who have tried out the Ginetta or other right-hand drive cars, you'll know that where you are in the car really does impact how you drive. So it will be very interesting to see how the two Ginettas fare throughout the season. And well, all I can say really is I'm very excited to see what's happening. We're just watching now the cars do their qualifying. Most of these guys are now on their first lap, so they've done their out lap and they're just setting their time now. I believe this car here, Wolf Machuska, will be the first person to cross the line and set a time in the Mercedes, so we will see where he's placed.
Yes, indeed. Coming back to us into entry here, and then, of course, the Wellington Straight. Strangely enough, my favorite straight on the entire course. Why? Because it leads into Brooklands and left field, two of my favorite corners. I know a lot of people would tell you they like Cops, Maggots, Beckett's, etc. Maybe Stowe and Vale, and even Club, some people. But my favorite section is this section. Brooklands now into left field, and out of Woodcote, the final turn before the front straightaway. Of course, not using the Formula One timing loop here, using the proper, in my opinion, GT loop. And coming to the line is the very distinctive pink 25, and he will go to provisional pole, the fastest of the time set by virtue of being the first. That was a 2:09.984, but that's been beat by Fisher, and now Verstappen has beaten that time as well. Our champion from a season ago, Tim Peck, is back.
Our champion is back, and this time he's decided to bring the Alpine with him. So clearly wanted to pick a little bit of an underdog of a car. Obviously, last season he drove the Chevrolet and showed us all what the Chevrolet could do. So he's looking to stir things up a bit in the Alpine. He's certainly doing that. He's the first person here to set a 208 in the qualifying, and the only person to set a 208 in the qualifying. So I imagine a couple more people will start to filter into the 208s as the qualifying goes on. We've got a couple of returning faces here. Fisher, obviously, was in the fight for first and to take the championship last season. He did very well. He sort of came up through around round 2 and 3. He really started to build up those points and start to fight for the championship. Roubliard as well, known for his brilliant starts and just really poor luck when it comes to the racing. Always manages to find himself in a sticky situation, but I say it every time we come to a track, and I'm going to say it again, he is going to be looking to secure some sort of victory today. Roubliard obviously is a very good racer. He just needs to find basically the luck he needs on the track. And then Lawrence as well, another returning driver. I believe he's paired up with Billy Octane today. So those two will be driving for the Triple R in the BMW.
Well, this championship is going to be very interesting because you have the challengers from a season ago who come in here with the knowledge and maybe a little bit of momentum on their side, and then you have drivers that are here for the first time, perhaps ever, and certainly for the first time in about 6 months. Mike Noble comes to mind in the 1-2-3 McLaren. That car has went provisional pole, a 2:08.835, the quickest lap, out qualifying Verstappen here. But what does Garrett Fisher and the likes of the rest of the field have? In fact, we actually currently have an AM car. The 727 is actually quicker than the entire silver field right now. And you were asking earlier, as Garrett Fisher goes third, a 2:08.907. Tim, you asked earlier what the difference is. Well, some of the silver teams have a pro driver, and then they have a driver that may be a silver or even an AM. It balances out to a silver. So all the pro teams have two pro class drivers, meaning that they're incredibly quick and also incredibly consistent. Silver may have a driver that is a pro and may have a driver that is a little less consistent or a little less quick. AM drivers, of course, are drivers that are made up of a silver and an AM or two AMs. I hope that explains that. Certainly we'll have to explain that throughout the championship as we go along. Qualifying continuing here. All three classes, by the way, out on the track at the same time. 33 cars. It is a big old track, isn't it? It isn't the hardest place to find space to run, but even so, it is important to find your space.
Yeah, there's a lot of space really to be made here. Obviously, it's about 2 minutes for a lap, so you've got quite a lot of time to space yourself out. Not that you might necessarily want to in some places. I mean, obviously, if you send yourself out in a bit of a gap, that means you might not get in as many laps as everyone else. So you do want to make sure you're getting as many laps as possible whilst in the space to do so. But also, you've got a lot of long straights here. So let's say you've placed yourself just right, you'll be able to get quite a lot of slipstream along those straights, which will massively help your lap times as well. So I imagine a lot of the cars are going to be looking to capitalise off that. Personally, at the moment, I'm just in awe at the fact that the top 5 are all completely different cars. You've got a McLaren currently on provisional pole, followed by an Alpine of all cars. Then you've got an Aston Martin, the Mercedes driven by Machuska, and then Lawrence and the BMW is in 5th. So you can't really steer it any way so far. And as we know from last season, the Chevrolet is the car that came out on top. So I think there's going to be a lot of surprises. They're already starting to show now as the 10 pros do round out the top 10. There are a couple a little bit further down that may not have been able to find the lap they want yet, but this is already starting to look very exciting. I can't wait to see what Verstappen can do in this Alpine. I'm also very excited to see what the two Ginettas can do. Currently, there's one sitting in 15th and one in 18th. I'm personally rooting for them a little bit to get into the top 10. I would love to see it.
Well, here he is, Mike Noble, provisional pole sitter in the FFS Racing 1-2-3 McLaren. And last time I saw Mike Noble, he had I would say it, very standard livery. He must have took offense to that and made his car extra interesting, we'll say, for this championship. And it's certainly very stand out, and it's going to stand out in front of the field if nobody else can get close to that. I am amazed, by the way, Tim Peck, that Alpine, that 747 Alpine of Verstappen, they are so close to pole position. I wouldn't have called that for the little Alpine.
It's definitely an achievement at that, but as we were saying, Verstappen is the current reigning champion from last season, so we do know what he can do, and he is going to be, I imagine, one of the front runners in the next couple of races. So I'd say everyone here will be looking to set for him. Fisher already looking to have a great start compared to last season. I'm not even sure if he was at race 1 in the previous championship, but he definitely made an impact towards the end, and this time it looks like he's going to be making an impact from the get-go. It's very important to qualify high up in these races just because it gives you that chance to have a bit of breathing room, especially on a very fast first corner here at Silverstone. So you don't really want to be packed in the middle of the pack here. You want to be given a little bit of space. Noble's actually just improved his time and given himself a little bit of a safety zone between Verstappen. So Verstappen's got a lot on him if he wants to put himself up into pole position here. But we're looking at Castro right now, who I believe is up on his time by quite a significant amount. Is he on an outlap here? Oh, I see. So this is Rubilar's teammate, according to Christian. Thank you, Christian, for broadcasting today. But this is Rubilar's teammate. So because he's now come out of the pits and he's now qualifying, we don't have an exact time what he's doing. But we'll see if he can do anything for the car and get it maybe a little bit above 7th. I'm very excited to see personally how Castro performs because I don't think I've seen him yet.
As always, we are reading the chat, as we always are, and Tom Watts says, I was happy with the 209 frowny face emoji. I know how you feel. I can't do 208s in a GT4 either, so you are in good company there. Somebody in chat also is talking about, Newski, talking about them being an AM driver. Well, here's the thing about that. They can be bumped up in different classes as the season goes, and they take their points with them if that does happen. So if anybody is way out of sorts or way out of their sort of range we would like to see, sometimes that happens happens voluntarily, and sometimes RCI Stewards forces them to be bumped up in a class. They get to keep all their points, so it doesn't matter either way, but you get the picture. Joe Gleason said we might have a spy in AM. I don't know what Joe Gleason's on about, but Chris Rubliar says go Wanma. And Wanma indeed going very well here early in the start of this. Killian Ryan Meenan in the chat as well. Hello. And for all of you that are in the chat, it is good to be back. I think I can speak for the entire broadcast team as soon as we finished GT4's last season, Tim, it was always, how do we get to the next season? We can't wait to get to the new season, and we're finally here.
Yeah, it was every time a race ended, it was always, I just remember there's that moment when no one says anything, and then it was always, what a race. We had some brilliant races last season, and I honestly, I loved commentating every second of it. It was, every race came with its own different quirks, and we went into some, like we approached Snetterton and we were all going, we're not quite sure if we like this track very much, and then obviously, I think it was, it was just
I lost my voice at
something.
Snetterton.
I lost my voice at Snetterton as well. Something amazing happened every single race. We had new winners basically every single time we came to a new track, and it was just so exciting. And it's why I love the GT4s, is you always see something different. I think they can be a lot more brutal with each other than the GT3s. They do tend to scrape up against each other a bit, and it's just a case of how much can you push someone around on the track, really. So it's always really exciting to watch them. And I was actually just watching, we've switched to Machuska now, but we were on Yeo for a bit, and he's managed to put his Ginetta in 9th place. So speaking of people who might get promoted from AM, I imagine he's probably one of the fresh people, contenders in line right now to get a promotion there. That is quite an achievement to have a Ginetta up in 9th. So it'll be interesting to see what Yeo can do across the course of the season. Maybe he's got something to show us, and maybe this is just a really good qualifying lap, but we will see in a minute, because we're just coming to the end of the qualifying now. Most people are probably on their final laps. There's a couple of people who are crossing the line now that may be able to just fit in one more lap, but we'll see how it goes from here.
Well, Mike Noble, who did a 208.7 this time by, did a 208.5, furthering the gap between him and Verstappen. It's up to 3/10 now, and I'm being told that Noble is on a flyer again. But what about Wolf Matuszka here? Not a bad start for Wolf here in 4th place, but could do just a bit better. If anything, could potentially get a little extra sort of time back, to anything to sort of get your confidence up, because certainly being 8/10 off the leader doesn't bode very well. A unusual scene here, as there is a very massive gap between the front driver and seemingly the rest of the field. You've got 2nd and 3rd very close, and then 3rd and 4th and 5th fairly close as well. But what can Wolf Matuszka do coming through Woodcote and up to the start-finish line? This looks like a good lap for the 25 Peak Performance car, and it was. It got them within just about half a second of Mike Noble, and that will not bump them up a position. So they'll start, well, unless anyone beats them, they'll start 4th place, and they are the first car to come across the line and finish. What about Yan Yo in the 303? That lap was not quicker, slower by 44 1,000. So, excuse me, that was through the trap. I do apologize. That was through the trap, not the end of the lap.
Very similar corners there, so I can understand how you'd get that confused. He is actually up on his time, so he may be able to slot himself up into 8th, maybe even 7th here, although it looks like he didn't do that corner quite so cleanly, so he has lost a little bit of time there. But we've got a little bit of this lap left to go. We'll see how he does. There's a nice long straight here and then 2 final corners, but he has lost the delta that I was previously seeing, but you never know, he might pick it all back up in these final few corners. This is looking very nice so far. He's gone a little bit too close to the inside here, which is going to mean he's got quite a tight line through this final corner. Let's see how he gets the exit off. It's nice, he's not sliding around too much. So this looks like it could be quite a good lap. No, I think he's actually losing out now, but a valiant effort from Yeo there at the end. There was almost an improvement to happen, so it's not over yet. We've still got 80 minutes of racing left to go. Anything can happen in that amount of time. I think what these drivers do have to remember now is that this is an endurance race. It is not 2 sprint races. They have got plenty of time to sit there and climb through those positions. They don't need to be doing any ridiculous diving moves on the first corner. There doesn't need to be any really dangerous antics. They have time, is what I hope they realise.
Results of qualifying confirmed on your screen here. Mike Noble on pole for race one here at Silverstone. A 2:08.538, good enough for the pole position and good enough to gap Verstappen by 3/10 of a second. Garrett Fisher did a valiant job in the 8.78 Aston Martin and will start on the second row with Wolf Matuszka, who was a little over half a tenth off the pace. Behind them, a little bit bigger of a gap. Jenkins, Martin Lawrence, the 21 Castro, Stevenson, and Yeo, the top 10. And of course, the AM car out qualifying all of the silver cars. And in fact, two of the AM cars doing that. The 727, who will start second in that class, 13th overall, also out qualifying the top silver qualifier of Sontag in the number 3. Pimlott in the middle of different classes there in the 913. Phil Roberts and Benton are the top 3 in silver, and going all the way back to 19th reveals Anderson, the third quickest AM driver. And this is normally, for the you that are with us on a regular basis, where Tim and I would take you through the standings. We don't have any. We don't have any. It's race number 1. So we're going to talk about some of the changes and some of the differences here. Effective November 1st, for all of the seasonal championships, RCI has changed a lot of its rule book, and I'm going to share some of that with you here. Well, simply put, Tim, having incidents deemed negligent, can get you bigger penalties now for things that you may have been given a 15-second penalty. You might get a drive-through for, and for things that you might have gotten a drive-through for, you might get a stop and go 10, maybe even worse.
Yeah, there's definitely now is not the time to do something dodgy that will get you a penalty. But in all fairness, you can take it both ways. Some people might be thinking, oh, that's a bit harsh to up the penalties, whilst others are thinking, no, that's good. It makes it more fair and it obviously promotes less penalties to happen. So obviously, for this championship, I imagine it's not going to make too much of a difference. Like I've already said, it's an endurance championship, so you'd hope there wasn't that many penalties being handed out anyway, seeing as it's quite a long race, so you've got time to just sort of sit back and avoid the penalties. But remembering some of the races from last season, I think if we'd have had those penalties in place there, it could have been rough, dramatic for how the season would have ended, because there was a lot of chaos. And it's like you say, it's not always deliberate, and like a lot of the time the penalties that happen and the accidents are just that, they're accidents. But now is the time to really focus on how you're driving and just avoid those penalties, because as you said, if you get them, they're going to be worse. And if you end up getting a stop and go of 30 seconds, and that can be the difference between winning a race and losing the race. That's how close some of these cars come sometimes. So you have to be very careful now in a lot of the championships.
And of course, a couple of other things that are slightly different as well is if it's deemed to be a particularly heinous incident on lap 1, you might just get disqualified from the race. Of course, there's no live stewarding for the Thursday GT4 Championship. It all happens post race. But even though it's not live stewarding, all these penalty changes still apply. They can retroactively remove you from a race and DQ you if you piled up a bunch of cars in turn 1. So even though we don't have stewarding here live with us today, it still is going to matter. You're going to see time penalties. You're going to see drive-throughs, which will be actually, you won't see drive-throughs because you can't get drive-throughs retrospectively, but you get the point. It is quite a big deal. And the GT4s are the first group to get run through that ringer. Of course, their Friday championship starting up tomorrow with live stewarding will be the first live fire drill for the stewards. But this is the first race with this new rules package. It's going to be very interesting to see what comes of that. On top of all the new rule changes for stewarding, this championship is different. As Tim Peck alluded to earlier, last season, this was a 30-minute times 2 event. You'd run 2 30-minute races every week. You'd get points. You'd move on. As this man is really happy to wave that orange flag for whatever reason. Must be a Verstappen fan. Almost said Verstappen there. Freudian slip.
He was
Might be a
going for it.
Verstappen fan. But either way, of course, an 80-minute race, a team championship this season as well. Driver and stint limit are the same, 45 minutes. You cannot exceed 45 minutes in the car with one driver. You have to come down pit lane, strap in a new driver, and finish the race at that point. That's going to invite strategy, Tim Peck.
It is, and I was going to mention as well, each stint is maximized at 45 minutes, so there is really only a 5-minute window in the middle of each race for you to get that switch in, because of course the race is 80 minutes and your stint can only last 45 minutes in total. So I think that might make things quite interesting overall. Personally, I was thinking, are we going to see a lot of 20-minute pit stops, switching someone out quite early or later on, depending on how well they're doing? But with this 45-minute stint time, it is going to really limit to when you can pit. So around the 45-minute mark, you're going to see every single car dive into the pit lane as quickly as possible, which can really shake up quite a lot of the order. One pit stop, depending on how much damage you have and just how quick you are to get off the throttle in general, can depend where you place in the race. You can lose 1 or 2 positions in the pits, so we may see some of that today as we now begin the outlap for the very first race of Season 5 of the GT4 Championship. We're here at Silverstone. It's 2:23 p.m, so I think the race has not been set up how I originally thought it would be. I thought it was going to be a night race, but it's 2:23 p.m. We are starting the outlap for the first race of the season. Ryan will be starting out on pole with Verstappen just behind him, so the 1-2-3 car has switched out their driver for the beginning of the race. Fisher will be in third, Machuska is in fourth, and Tom Bryant will start in fifth place. So don't look away now. This first lap could define how this race goes, but it could also not. We don't know yet how the drivers are going to be. Like we've just said, an accident on the first lap could see them disqualified very quickly. So everyone does need to be a little bit careful, but we are going to find out how this season will pan out from today's race, which will start in about 2 minutes.
Well, I love to see the GT4 enthusiasm from the chat here at RCI. We always read the chat. We love watching what you guys have to say and commenting on that further. Nigel, Katrina, very excited for some GT4 action. See a lot of the drivers in the chat as well, cheering on their teammates and some fans alike as well. Got some Rubliar fans in chat as well, and you love to see that. And Carlos in chat still loving Christian Stricker's camera work. I mean, who wouldn't? Christian is brilliant at his job. As we get ready to go racing, it's so good to be back. I don't know what it is about GT4 racing. Maybe it's your first GT4 season you've ever seen, and well, if it is, you've joined at the exact right time at the beginning of the championship. These teams this season are going to be put through it, and it all starts today. We did qualifying earlier, and normally around Silverstone, we don't think qualifying matters too much. It does in a GT4 car, because you're only going to get so many opportunities with less horsepower, with less grip, with less aero to make that move. How will the pit stops affect the race? These are all questions for the very first time will be answered in the next 1 hour and 20 minutes.
We have a rule in my little team. We do some endurance races, and the rule is always avoid damage at all costs. That is the key to these endurance races, because if you can avoid damage, you don't have any extra time in the pits. You can just go, you can change your tyres, you can change your driver, and then you can leave the pits. There's no additional time waiting. But let's say you get caught up in an accident, whether it's your fault or not, if you've got damage, it can really start to scale up over time, and even 3 seconds worth of damage can make the difference in which position you come. So the golden rule is, the only thing I can pass on to these drivers is avoid damage at all costs. You do have to pit in this race. You can't just drive to the end with a little bit of light damage. You will have to pit. You don't have to fix that damage, to be fair, but you do have to assess whether it's going to balance out over time or not. As we now come round the final corner, we are going to find out who is going to take the lead from the first corner in this first race of the season. And personally, Jesse, I'm very excited, so take it away.
The big question here today, Mike Noble was stellar in qualifying. Can anybody catch Noble and the 123 FFS racing team here today? What can the defending champion that starts on the front row with him do? Can Fisher and Matushka do something about it? from row 2. Lining up on the front straightaway for the GT cars. They go under the starter's box and wait for the 30-some car field to get onto the straightaway, waiting for it, and we are green for the very first time in this new GT4 season. Down the inside, Mike Noble Verstappen looking to get an outside move, and it's an excellent move by Wolf Matuszka getting in front of Garrett Fisher, leading into Maggots and Beckett's. Noble has the lead. They're all single file. One car goes off. Is that a Triple R car? I think it might have been Billy Octane.
That does look like Billy Octane, who's gone wide here, is now looking at Borodai, who's fighting to keep himself in what I think is 10th place, but the stats haven't updated yet, so we don't know. But what a start from Matuszka, and we saw a lot from him last season as well. He's very good at just getting the outside of the corner and powering around, even if it means he doesn't have the inside here. As the fights continue to happen, we've got two cars battling out there behind Jake Boswell, who is in the Aston Martin. That will be Yeo and Sontag. So Yeo in the Ginetta is fighting to keep up. It looks like he's fallen back a little bit. So I imagine Sontag may have found his way through here as we now come back to the fight at the front, where Fisher is determined to get back the podium position of Matuszka. He is not dropping back at all, and these are currently your 4 front runners. They've given themselves a little bit of distance to the cars behind, so we'll see what Fish can do going into this fast corner here. It looks like he's going to take a little bit of curb, not enough to knock him off, but it won't be good enough to get him through Matuszka. But it's not over yet. He may be able to find something here. It looks like, for the most part, for now, he's going to have to back off a little bit. There's not really a chance of rising, but with 78 minutes left in this race, you can't complain. Fisher has time to get back up there. As we now cut back down into the pack, where Yeo is yet again having to defend. This time it looks like from Jake Boswell, who may have fallen back behind him. So Yeo has found himself a couple of positions himself.
Well, yeah, and Yeo being a very good opportunist. I was just being told by Tom Bryant earlier that some of these cars, especially the AM cars, they are teamed up with drivers that are AM quality. So their qualifying position may not be indicative of their overall pace due to the pace of the number 2 driver. We'll have to take a look at that all season long, and especially today. Our first look, the 417, that's Marshall's BMW, was completely stopped on the straight and has only now just got going. And major dramas for the 417, unknown if that was contact with another car or self-isolated, but one way or another, 7-1-4 at the tail end of this field now. Very damaged indeed. The Shuffle Sport 417 BMW, heavy damage, and that steering is that is majorly messed up.
I said you'll want to avoid damage here, and it looks like 417 has sadly been unable to avoid it, and that is a very damaged car.
What happened?
I don't know. He was on that bit of the straight where you're coming out of that sort of quite wide chicane there. He's on that bit of the straight where if you catch that inside curve a little bit too much, you can actually oversteer the car and hit the wall. So it might just be that he's spun out and hit the wall, but it also might be someone's hit him. As we look at Pimlott now, who was looking to make a move, I believe, on Sontag and not quite finding his way through. I think I've got the right cars there. But Pimlott, 14th place. I believe he's climbed a little bit. He will be looking to climb a little bit further. Keeping up with the main pack. It looks like he's going to move around the outside now, and here's Fisher. He's on the Wolf Matuszka. He's still looking for a way through here. And although Noble is still in the lead, they're still fairly bunched up. Verstappen has fallen back. He's about a second behind Noble now, but all is not lost yet. There is time. There is time, everybody, for everyone to reorganize their positions. But Fisher here is still very much focused on getting through Matuszka as soon as possible. It looks like he might look for the inside coming through the next corner. He's not. He's going to just focus on really staying with Matuszka. There is a big opportunity at the end of the straight here. It's a really good place to overtake that first corner. If you can find either the outside or the inside line, as long as you can get the acceleration right, then you can find yourself way through. So Matuszka here is going to be looking to defend that, whilst Fisher is getting the slipstream through. It looks like he's that little bit too far back to make too much of an impact, but he feels it coming. And Matuszka, I'm not sure if he will be able to deal with this amount of pressure for 75 minutes. So that's the other thing you have to consider here, is how much pressure are these drivers going to be on? They could be bunched up like this for the entire 80 minutes.
Something else that has occurred is the 727, who was running second in AM, has fallen down through the field. They are in fourth place in that field, all the way down to 23rd. And that's major considering they were running about 13th or 14th. So something amiss with the 727 as well, as they have fallen to the field. That promotes this man, Trevor Anderson, up into the second place position in that category, as they're all racing very hard here and also trying to stay off of one another. One other thing we didn't talk about with GT4s, and something that I didn't realize was a big issue until I started watching this series, that's a dive and contact there. And continuing to race each other very hard in the background. Is that Pimlott and Polanco? I think that is.
That was Pimlott and Polanco.
Oh, Fisher.
Fisher
I thought Fisher was going for it there.
I thought he was going for it too. I thought that was going to be the move, but he can't quite get the inside line yet, but he's still just trying to squeeze his way through.
He's just sticking his nose in there every chance he gets.
He is so ready to get that podium position back, and Matuszka's doing an amazing job of just managing to defend on every single corner. He's placed his car really well in the middle, and he's not giving Fisher any room to do what Fisher wants to do here, but these two have been battling it out since the first corner, and they're going to continue. This has been some amazing racing for both of them. 417 may have retired as they're still in the pits. We have no idea. They had quite a lot of damage, so they could be just trying to fix a lot of damage, but I imagine that it looks like we might have a replay here, so we might get to find out what happened. This looks like it's the right bit of the straight, although we can't quite see what's happened to him. It doesn't look like this is the right place, but either way, it looks like he may have retired from the race if he's not going to come out of the pits, so we'll see what happened there. I did notice another car went into the pits earlier. I'm not quite sure what it was. I believe it was Pope in car number 79. He peeled into the pits quite early as well. You can see him now quite a way behind the rest of the pack here, so I wonder what happened to him as well. There's definitely been a couple of accidents dotted around here, so we'll see. But for now, Fisher continues to chase Matuszka. Realistically, Jesse, do you think this is an overtake that might happen soon, or do you think we're going to watch this one for quite a while before anything big happens?
Well, it's Garrett Fisher, so I'm assuming it will at some point. They're very racy at the moment, and you have to be, as these two continue to go at and try and get one up. This is Chris Rubliar, who had a very frustrating season. I am surprised. I'm going to be honest with you, Tim. I'm surprised Chris Rubliar is back this season after how tough last GT4 season was. But here he is back again, not willing to let that beat him. And, of course, now trying to get the sixth place position. Garrett Fisher trying to get the third place position from Wolf Matuszka. Matuszka took that spot from him on the initial start around the outside of all things. But they still run nose to tail as Mike Noble, every lap, continues to gain a little bit of ground. It's not massive, but it is enough. And this battle here between Matuszka and Fisher has let Verstappen get away himself by more than a second. So looking good for the top two. And this fight, of course, for the final podium spot in the pro class. I was told by Joe Gleason, who's one half of the team in the 320 car, that they had reviewed what happened, and they've informed us that several cars spun in the back and some had hard contact. Pimlott's off, and was that Phil Malter? Who was that behind them? Was that Polanco? That is Polanco in the 86. They inevitably had contact. Polanco still struggling to... Oh, and that's an unsafe rejoin, and that's going to crash several cars. You can't do that.
Oh, that is not the rejoin he wanted, and I think he's just about to retire from the race there, but honestly, I think he might have been retired anyway by the stewards themselves after the race. I think that is exactly the sort of incident you were talking about that you do not want to happen with the new rules in place, but you have to be so careful rejoining, and it is really hard to find that space, especially when you're coming back onto a track at quite a tight set of corners, but you have to do it really carefully. You have to slowly edge yourself back onto the track, and you absolutely can't do it if there's any sort of traffic coming. It's honestly better to just wait until they're through. As we see car 21 now, he is looking for a move on Pimlott. It looks like he's maybe holding down the outside line here as he comes in through this corner. Oh, and Pimlott's just going to squeeze him back behind. So 21, he's not going to be able to find it yet, but these two have been battling out both in Aston Martins, matching Aston Martins at that. They're sporting the same livery there. So they've been battling out since the beginning as well. Very interested to see how that one turns out, but for the time being, 21 will remain down in 16th. Absolutely looking for 15th, but yeah, I was going to say, in regards to Fisher and Machuska at the front, looking at last season, in my opinion, they were probably the two most racy drivers, which they are yet again showing here. These two are, Machuska's very good at attacking, Fisher's also very good at attacking. They are probably the two with the most overtakes last season, and they're really showing it here today. They have just been battling out, and personally, this is the fight I wanted to see. These are two brilliant drivers, and they're just so closely matched together that I wouldn't be surprised. Fisher's great at overtaking, but Machuska's also very great at attacking as well. So we could see this fight go on for a little while as Machuska actually gets a little bit wide there, but will manage to hold it together and stay ahead of Fisher. So with still over an hour left of this race, absolutely anything could change in this front order.
Well, chat reacting to the Polanco incident and reacting in the same way that we reacted, so certainly no difference of opinion with that. And remember when I said that you could be DQ'd for a single incident if it was bad enough? That might qualify, not DQ'd from the championship, mind you, DQ'd from the race. So even if they were to get a result today, which I don't think they are, they may not get to keep any points from this race. We'll have to see. We'll talk about that next week, but for right now, keep that incident in the back of your brain because it may come up. This is how it started, by the way. Alexander Polanco and the 913, I think that's Pimlott, and just some contact there, and that's going to send Polanco and just trying to rejoin. And Tim, we've all been there, haven't we? It's so difficult, but you got to shift into reverse and sort of back yourself off the track, get yourself straight, and get up some speed. You wouldn't join a interstate or highway or an A road coming head on to it, would you? You always are on a slip road. So unfortunate, but the damage has been done for many of the other competitors.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way of looking at it as well, is you wouldn't join a road that's filled with cars like that. You would always sort of tuck into the side and just slowly ease yourself back in. And these things happen, like you said, we've all been there. I imagine that every person's sort of racing life at some point, they've accidentally rejoined the track where they shouldn't have. And if it's in the public lobby, then it's something you can leave and just forget about it. But here in the private lobby, that is probably not something you really want to do, but he has retired from the race, it looks like, and he won't be coming back out here. But I think the real sad part of this is that I think I saw 3 other cars got caught up in that rejoin incident, so all 3 of them now are going to be set back that little bit. Some of them had a little bit more damage than others as well, so they're going to be really feeling that incident themselves. As we look at Borodai right now, he looks like he's about to make a move on Anderson. He's gone a little bit too much curb there on the inside, so his acceleration isn't going to be as good as we have seen previously. But he's definitely looking for that move, so Anderson's going to slot himself back in very aggressively, but a brilliant defensive move from him there, which is going to push Borodai back that little bit into Maggots and Beckett. So very good defending there from Anderson, and Borodai is just looking to find his way through here. So we'll see how this fight turns out soon. Yeo has managed to keep his Ginetta up in 10th, so he's probably very happy with that. He's still on Jake Boswell as well, so I imagine he's looking to try and push that Ginetta up even further. And we've got all of these little trains forming, which we usually see. I mean, we saw it a lot in the last season. You get like the main pack, which tends to be 2 or 3, maybe even 4 drivers pulling away, and then you get the mid pack, which is where most people sort of clump up together, and that's where a lot of the action, the fighting happens. And then you've got the people who are usually the ones involved in incidents that fall back that little bit and form their own little trains towards the back. And you can see them now. If you look at the mini map on the right hand side of your screen, they're starting to form up a little bit. So we can see what happens here. It looks like Yeo is ready to make that move. I believe actually he's defending against Roberts there, but Roberts was desperately trying to get himself up into 10th. He fancied himself up then. Yeo said, nope, this is my place. I'm keeping it. Back off. I'm trying to take Boswell here.
One of the weird properties of the GT4 car that you will not see a GT3 or a Super Trofeo or any other car in ACC do is they really use the curbs. They work the curbs and even go past that. These cars, most of them anyway, I'm not saying they can all do that obviously, but most of these cars can even hit the anti-cut curb that's the anti-cut little red baguette curbs on the inside, and it doesn't really bother them too much. Case in point right there, Wolf Matuszka. And that's just a property of the lower speed, the less aero-dependent car. It just doesn't care as much. And it is easy to get a track cut violation from doing that. Because, look, they're on the grass. You're not going to see any other car in ACC take that line, but you will see that out of especially the front-engine GT4 cars. And every time I see it, I have to remind myself that is normal for these cars. And it's just so unusual. You have to completely, even though it's similar to the GT3 platform, you have to completely relearn how to drive some circuits because you hit the curbs so hard.
Speaking of track cuts, Fisher might have just received a little warning himself there, going wide through that corner. He's still desperately trying to find a way through Matuszka here, which I imagine is not making it easy to not go wide, because with the extra little bit of slipstream, he's going to have a little bit more oomph coming through some of these corners than he's perhaps expecting. But he's got a lot of slipstream here. It looks like he may be in a position to make a move. We'll see coming up into this corner. He's going to be a little bit far back for now, but again, a great case in point of just look at how these cars take these corners. They engulf the entire curb when they go over them here, and we're going to see it on pretty much all of these corners here. I imagine both Matuszka and Fisher will take as much curb as is possible, but we'll see what happens. I was going to say Matuszka as well. On that first corner, the very fast one, he goes quite wide on there, so I wouldn't be surprised if he's picked himself up a couple of warnings as well. And we've seen it a lot in the sprint races last season, so it wouldn't surprise me if we see it in the endurance races these times. But track cuts often start to really rack up towards the end, and then you see the drive-through penalties, which are given by ACC itself. That's all done automatically in the race, so that could play a big part on how this race turns out. And honestly, right now, I think Fisher might be hoping that Matuszka gets one all of a sudden, or at least gets a couple more warnings to make him take those corners a little bit easier, because Fisher is still looking for that way through Matuszka here. We're going to come back into, I believe this is the first corner again, and there's no opportunity arising for Fisher. Every time he does a corner perfectly, so does Matuszka, and that's the real struggle here with two drivers who are so evenly matched. Is once Matuszka sort of capitalizes once at that first corner in the very first lap he gets through, there's not really a lot Fisher can do unless Matuszka makes a mistake now. So we'll see how that fight turns out soon.
Well, I'm happy to say I've known Wolf Matuszka for quite a long time now, and he's not even really looking in the mirror, I bet. And I think he trusts Fisher a little bit as well with the way that they've raced each other. Fisher's been very aggressive, but he's also been very polite about it. He's not stuck his nose in where it doesn't belong. He's tried to going around him and under him, and neither one has worked. So when you get into a battle like they're having for third, you get kind of comfortable with him, because after so many laps, it just becomes like, okay, well, you're clearly not going to dump me, or at least I don't think you're going to dump me. So we're actually racing. So Matuszka, the caliber that he is, and Fisher, the caliber he is, Matuszka doesn't care, and Fisher knows that if he gets in there, Wolf will likely give him room. So they're having a lot of fun here. I suspect some grins every now and then out of the two of them whenever they beat each other off or into one of the corners. And of course, the added bonus of fighting for third place here in the early goings. I was going to tell you of some dramas, but Ethan Jenkins here is under Billy Octane's under attack from Ethan Jenkins, and that is going to be pass done and dusted for the HWT Motorsport car, the 24 Alpine up into fifth. So two Alpines up into fifth place. Oh, Ethan Jenkins was under attack from Octane still down that straightaway, the bigger grunt of that BMW, and just in front of that group, Garrett Fisher still on the back of Wolf Matuszka, now getting flashed a little bit, is the driver of the Pink Performance 25 AMG.
I love it when they flash at each other, because you can never tell if they're maybe a little bit angry or if they're just trying to really throw Matuszka off his game. But Fisher was flashing there at Matuszka. I imagine it was just to throw him off a little bit. It looks like it might have worked, but Schuster actually went a little bit wide there. So Fisher's kind of hoping to strike. For a second, I thought he had the overtake. I mean, I'm not sure quite what happened in that corner. I don't know if there was contact between them, but Machushka went very deep and was really on the inside going through that final corner there. And Fisher was in a much more optimal position, I'd say, but just not really able to find his way through. I think we're going to have a replay now of Rubliar.
Well,
I'm not
well, he, here's what happened. Rubliar got around Billy Octane. You'll remember Ethan Jenkins had just passed the 304 BMW of Octane, and Octane made a aggressive move down the inside of the straightaway, and I think he got boxed in, and Rubliar said thank you very much and took the 6th place. So Octane, in the course of 2 or 3 turns, lost 2 spots. That'll frustrate the 304 driver, but nonetheless, still 7th place and still in the game. What I was going to say earlier, it doesn't look like it's the case anymore, and I think there's some shenanigans going on with the sector timings, Tim. But what I was going to say is it appeared Verstappen was catching Mike Noble. That is not the case anymore as the gap continues to go out. Actually, it just goes back in again, so I'm not sure what's going on. It could just be that the Alpine is so much slower on the straightaways, it's giving us funny sector times as we watch Stevenson here fight with Billy Octane trying to get that spot. That was completely off the track. Surely that's a track cut.
You'd think, wouldn't you? But you just don't know of these corners because obviously they set up these track cuts with really what a GT3 could probably do in mind. So they're probably not expecting GT4 to cut that much corners. It looks like Stevenson is going to go for yet another move on Octane here, and Octane is going to push him round to the outside. Stevenson is going to get a much better exit out of this corner here because he did have that outside line, but Octane manages to hold on to 7th place for another day. Whoa. That was some very close racing there from the BMW and the Chevrolet. The Chevrolet, yet again, looking like a very good choice in a GT4 car. It's not one that you necessarily expect to be good, but Octane's gone a little wide here. Looks like Stevenson maybe looking down the inside a little bit. But he's not going to find it before Maggots and Beckett's here. But I've forgotten what you originally was asking me, but something about the track cut on the corner. Yeah, I think a lot of these track cuts are made with what the GT3 capabilities are in mind. So what you've got to think about is the fact that a GT3 there, if it had done what Stevenson just did in the Chevrolet, it would have just spun out and not been able to cope. So it may just be that on that corner, it doesn't necessarily register that the car's gone off track, but it might be that it has and he's received a warning for it. We will find out later on in the race, depending on whether he gets that drive-through penalty or not. Well, if he doesn't, again, really, but it's been a lot of close fighting right now. One thing I did want to mention, actually, is we've already said about the real variety of cars that we have here. We've got some Alpine, some Ginettas, some cars that we really didn't see last season. We have just been informed that I believe there's a KTM and a Maserati that aren't represented here today. But Machushka, of course, decided he was going to drive the Maserati last season and clearly didn't think very much of it as he's returned this season in a Mercedes. So he gave the Maserati a go. Don't think it really worked out for him. Same with Billy Octane. I believe he was also in a Maserati and he's returned the BMW now. So a car with no traction control probably wasn't opted for in an endurance race. I imagine no one was really jumping up for joy to start putting in some laps of a Maserati this season.
So the eagle-eyed viewers among you may have noticed in the top right corner of the screen that there is light rain in 30 minutes. It's actually closer to 20 minutes now. I have a timer running for that. So because of that, the 21 has had incredibly heavy contact, and they were racing the 112. Did they get pinched here? So the 112 goes off the track. It loses control and sends the 21 Ollie Jars into the wall, hard front impact. And I imagine that's exactly what happened. The first incident we saw the day that we didn't actually get to see, I imagine that's almost a carbon copy of what happened there. I remember Kimi Räikkönen doing that years and years ago now in the British Grand Prix. Luckily, didn't collect anybody else, but had major contact with the wall and retired from that Grand Prix. But Luckily, virtual race cars, you don't usually get injured, but scary stuff indeed. But like I was saying, you may have noticed there's light rain. Now, I've had it confirmed to me by race admin Tom Bryant that it was supposed to be a 0.0% chance of rain for throughout the weather progression of the day. The weather progresses, it can get cloudy, it can get sunny, but at 0.0%, it was not supposed to rain. The only problem with that, Timpec, is it will rain in about 20 minutes from now.
This is definitely interesting. I hadn't actually noticed it, so well done to you for pointing that out, because I completely hadn't noticed it. I'm not sure if it's going to be enough to warrant a pit stop. That might just be enough to sort of warrant a bit of slower driving, because of course the track will, it's optimum right now. It's got to drop through all the stages, so it'll go to fast and then green and then greasy and so on. So it's got a little bit to work through yet. It depends on really how heavy that rain gets from the offset, and with a 0.0% chance of progression, I can't imagine it's going to be the heaviest rain we'll see. But I mean, we thought we weren't going to see rain at all, so we have no idea what will happen here. As Yeo, who is down in 12th now, so he's lost a couple of positions, is looking to make those positions back. He's a little bit far back right now, but the Ginetta has been very feisty so far this evening, and he's definitely looking to make his way through here. He's done a very lovely final corner there, but one thing that you should know about the Ginetta is the acceleration just isn't there. So you're going to watch now as the Aston Martin just pulls away with a fair bit of ease here, and that's one of the main weaknesses, I'd say, of the Ginetta. Whilst it is arguably one of the funnest cars to drive, it's really hard to deal with, especially on those straights, because you can't compete with anyone, and I imagine that will be a little bit frustrating as the season goes on, but it's one of those things that you deal with. If you pick the car, you've got to deal with all the quirks, good and bad, but we see here Yeo has done an amazing job so far in the Ginetta. I'm not sure where the other Ginetta has gone. He may have been one of the cars that has dropped out of the race so far, but it looks like Yeo might be about to prove me wrong and say, actually, I can overtake on the straight, thank you. Getting an amazing corner out at the end of Maggots and Beckett's there, but again, the Aston Martin has just got that much more acceleration on the straight, and you can see now how easy it is for any other car to just pull away. And the Ginetta now, again, on the corner, that's where it's making up all the time, and Yeo's done so well on all of these corners. He's just found that optimum line, and you can just see really how much effort he's having to put in here just to keep this Ginetta kept up with everyone else. So an amazing job here from the Ginetta, and another good job. They've got two Alpines in the top 5 still, and something you said might struggle at the beginning of the race. You said the Alpines maybe won't do so well here at Silverstone, but we've got 3 of them in the top 10, and a couple more just dotted around down in 18th and 21st there. But to have 3 Alpines on the top 10 in a track which really doesn't suit the Alpine, let's be real, with these really long straights, these guys are doing pretty well.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. There's certainly, I mean, you got 3 in the top 10. What more could you ask for? I'm impressed with Stevenson's Chevrolet as well. It's holding together. I was watching him do a few laps, and by the way, still behind Billy Octane, trying to get the 7th place spot from him. But I always worry that the Chevrolet is going to fall off, and it's been about 29 minutes, 28 minutes now, and it hasn't done that at all. If anything, it's come to life. I think Billy Octane is struggling with grip here, as he seems to be going a bit wide in some of the corners. Don't know if maybe the tire pressures are too high, too low, or they burnt off a little too much tire there at the start or heated them up too much. One way or another, he's missing wide on some of these corners, and either he's overdriving it, or there's something setup related that isn't quite to Octane's liking, but still holding it together, though, keeping Stevenson behind him. And we made a big deal about AMS out qualifying Silvers, and it does happen. It happens all the time at RCI, but qualifying is one thing, what we say, Tim, right? Qualifying is one thing, racing is another. Phil Roberts and Sontag now 1 and 2 in silver and in front of the AM field. That's why you do the races. That's why it's your class isn't based on your qualifying so much as it's based on well, a myriad of things, including race pace as well.
That's the thing, and we do say it all the time here, is qualifying is one thing, the race is another, and honestly it depends on the track as to which one you really want to put preferential treatment into. Like you said at the beginning, here at Silverstone, qualifying doesn't actually matter so much, because you can qualify quite high and there's a lot of places really to overtake, and you can also qualify quite low, and it's the same thing. You've got a lot of chances to really build up your position a bit more, even if you don't get the qualifying you need, which is being shown now by, I believe Borodai started quite low down in the pack for where he'd have wanted to be, and he's climbed through the places quite quickly himself as well. So obviously for Silverstone, you probably want to be looking a little bit more to the race, but it might just be that some of these AMs had a really good hot lap and just can't quite find the pace they want as well in the race. I know personally I'm more of a race person. I always say your qualifying lap you're going to get out of me is going to be the exact same pace as my race lap. There's no difference there. But with some people, you do notice a huge difference. I mean, some people can have a qualifying lap that's 1 to 2 seconds faster than their race places. Stevenson is really looking now to get through Octane. He's been hanging behind him now for a couple of laps, and like you said, he's doing an amazing job in the Chevrolet, which is managing to hold up pretty well. It doesn't look like he's not showing any signs of starting to fall back a bit. It looks like he's managing this car quite well, whereas Octane, I'd say, has probably had rather a frustrating race for his standards. Obviously a very good driver, but something went wrong around the hour mark there. It just looked like he was starting to lose grip a bit, and he's dropped a couple of positions because of it. Obviously Jenkins and Roubliard managed to push their way through fairly quickly in succession of each other, but now Stevenson is looking for it too. So Billy Octane is probably looking to maybe work on those tyre pressures a bit for the next stint, for his teammates to come in and just do some damage really and try and get some BMW up there into the top 5 yet again. But coming back now to Fischer and Machuska, I mean, this has been the story. Oh, it looks like Fischer went for it there, but this has been the story of the race so far, is when is Fischer going to get back through? Is he going to get back through in it? It looks like he maybe outbroke himself a little bit there and went really wide because of it, and now Machuska has a chance to breathe. If he wasn't already, Machuska is not worried now. He has got time to just sit there and focus on himself for a bit. He doesn't have to keep defending going into those corners. And this may be the little boost that Machuska needs to start catching again on Verstappen.
Did you all notice the exact moment that our lovely broadcaster Christian Stricker went to that camera? That was the one time that Garrett Fischer did not make the corner. It was almost like Christian knew that something was going to happen in that chicane. That's incredible stuff. Excellent camera work as always. And, well, that will put Fischer behind the 8 ball, so to speak, and he'll have to get some of that time back if he wants to continue to contest that spot. It'll be interesting to see if he can claw that time back. By the way, you have all probably noticed the amber number 1 beside the number of the car. Well, of course, that means there's a mandatory pit stop. What are the requirements, you may be wondering? Very simple. You must do a driver change. And by the way, remember, 45-minute stint limit for all drivers in the 80-minute race. So that does limit your strategy somewhat, but of course, that is the only requirement. You don't have to take tires. You don't have to take fuel if you don't want to. Certainly, it would be advantageous to take tires, considering it doesn't add any extra time. The driver swap covers the amount of time it would take to put 4 tires on the car, Tim.
Speaking of that pit stop, it is coming up fairly soon. I think if I've done the math right, it will be around the 40-minute marks. They've got 7 minutes really just to wait before they have to do that pit stop, and obviously you just said they have to change their drivers, so we'll see a whole new set of drivers coming out here, and they'll all have different skill levels too, which means we could see a big rearrange in these orders and some new fights start to form. Noble's teammate may not be as fast as Verstappen's teammate. That could bring that fight for first place back together, and then so on down the rest of the pack. Similarly, Noble's teammate might be that much faster as well and might just take it away even more. So we'll see how these new second drivers come in. Once they do, that'll be in about 6 minutes time now. Not an overly large pit window, about 5 minutes you have to get in this pit stop here, so you maybe have 1 or 2 laps extra leeway depending on when you pit. It's not going to make a huge difference in terms of the strategy as to whether you push it a little bit longer, but it could make a little bit of difference, especially with the rain still due to come. But again, I don't think the rain is going to force another pit stop. I think it's just going to be a case of slap on another pair of dry tyres and just hope that you can manage throughout the rain and that it doesn't get too much, as we're watching Corella right now slipping and sliding through that set of corners there. It doesn't look like he was overly comfortable there at all, as it looks like, is that the 727 trying to fight a way through? Or how I think I've got the complete wrong cars. I believe that is Massey and Corella fighting out for position here with the 727 now. He's now looking for a move down the inside of Macy. It looks like he's not going to quite make it, but that was a lunge and a half from way back. And oh, he's going for it again down the inside corner. He's going to be able to hold it. He's pushing Macy out. This is Corella. He's pushing Corella out to the outside line. He's just pushed himself through into that position, cutting in Jesse's favourite spot where it looks like you really can't cut there, but they're making it work. And now the BMW, with all of its top speed on the straight, is looking to strike back, but the Aston Martin is going to hold on. It looks like he's actually been pushed a little bit to the outside, and the BMW is going to soar right back through on the corner. The Aston Martin is now looking for maybe a better exit, but he has just got that snap of oversteer and has just disappeared off the side of the final corner there. So a good bit of fighting there between the BMW and the Aston Martin, and the 45 BMW Courier. He's going to have that position for another day. That was the fight for 19th place, Jesse Lee.
Yeah, it sure is. I mean, that's the lovely part about GT4. There are races everywhere. Speaking of which, contact here. Yan Yo is going to get a little bit sideways after contact with none other than Phil Roberts. That's going to let Sontag go through. Sontag, is that yes, that is, in fact, Sontag, who will take the lead in silver because of that contact. Roberts was trying to sort of slow up, even though I think Yan was the one trying to do the overtaking. It'd be hard to tell who made that more difficult, but either way, a little bit of contact, and realistically, Roberts is the one that lost out there.
Roberts has just taken a huge loss there, even though he's still ahead of Yan. It looks like Sontag has managed to push his way through, but I mean, Sontag just made that look easy. There's that little bit of collision between them. They both went off their separate races and both did a very good job of holding it together. But Sontag just sort of really carefully zipped his way through the middle, made it look completely easy. It didn't even look like he'd broken for it. He just shot his way through, navigated through them really quickly. It's basically the smoothest it could have been. Yeo here is determined to get that position though. And you can see now coming through this corner, he's dipped to the inside a little bit, and then obviously he's that little bit too far back, so couldn't make the move on Roberts, and Roberts just tucked in that little bit more to secure that he kept that position. But Yeo in this Ginetta, he's been very feisty and he's determined to show what he can do, and this is the first pit stop of the race. It's Billy Octane coming in the BMW, so he's about to swap out with, I believe it's Martin Lawrence who's about to come in to the car here, but I think that's a little bit too early for the pit window. No, it's not. No, that's fine. That's me doing the calculation wrong. That is the pit window that he's just coming on. So the BMW is fine then. We'll see where he manages to come out in the pack. I believe he pitted around 7th place. Yes, so Stevenson's 7th place now. So we'll see where he slots back into the middle of the pack. And hopefully he comes out in a nice gap where he can just power around the track as quickly as possible and maybe get a bit of an undercut going on some of the cars ahead. It's happened here before. Silverstone is one of the better tracks. With such a long track in itself, being 2 minutes lap, there's a lot of opportunity here to get an undercut. And if you can get that little bit of space and have a really good outlap, the opportunity does arrive. So we'll see what happens there. But Yeo is back again on Roberts. Hopefully this time there won't be contact coming through these corners. But Yeo just managing to hold it together. Both cars are very stable right now. There's not too much sliding. And honestly, at this point, I think it's best if Yeo just backs off a little bit. The pit window is not open for a lot longer. It might just be best to back off here and maybe try again once they've swapped the drivers around, because realistically, even if he does get through here, there's no telling he's going to hold it even if they make it to the pits.
Pit stops underway in the middle section of this race. And now is as good a time as any to welcome you all to a brand new season of GT4 racing. It's good to be back on RCI TV. We hope you're having as much fun as we are. I'm Jesse Lee with Tim Peck on comms and Christian Stricker bringing you all the pictures of the broadcast today, as we will do throughout this entire championship. Halfway through the first race, and Phil Roberts is loose as Yan Yeo going up the inside, and will look to get this position away. Now keep in mind, that doesn't count for points. That is just a step, another car in between him and Anderson for the AM win. and several cars in pit lane, including the silver class leader of Tobias Sontag. And that continues. Chris Rubliar in the pit as well. But as I was saying, if you're enjoying the broadcast, if you like GT4 racing, or maybe just like ACC in general, why not like, subscribe, hit the bell for more GT racing action. We'll be back with you, or I'll be back with you rather, tomorrow night for the start of the brand new Friday Championship in the GT3 cars. It's a lot of fun. You're going to want to be there, so make sure that you get notified when we go live tomorrow evening. And a big thank you to all of our partners that make this race and every race possible here on RCI TV. Race Department, AK Informatica, Driver 61, Fanatec, and Sim Racing GP. You can get 25% off your driver coaching by using our discount code at driver61.com. And certainly driver coaching can help make you a better racing driver. It worked for Mike Slap and Go Jones. It can work for just about anybody. A big thank you to AK for hosting our servers, and also feel free to use our Fanatec affiliate link and get yourself some nice Fanatec gear. It doesn't cost you anything, and using the affiliate link could help us with things like server cost and the like. And a big thank you, of course, to Sim Racing GP Race Department as well. Pit stops continuing. Mike Noble, the leader, qualified out in front of the field and has not relinquished the lead and has only grown it. Mike Noble in the pit lane. He will give way to his number 2 driver. Verstappen, by the way, has not pitted yet. The Never Say Never Alpine will go one more lap. Certainly, they have to be in this lap.
I'm sorry to say it, but you are wrong. Noble had given himself a huge lead there over Verstappen, but when he pitted there, he was only 7/10 ahead. Verstappen was right behind him going through that final set of corners, so there is a huge opportunity here for Verstappen and his teammate to come out in front once he is pitted. He is now in clean there. He has got the entire track to himself for the most part. If he can put out a decent lap, he's not doing me favours by going wide there. But if he can put out a really good lap here and then pit and make that really smooth, they might come out ahead of the McLaren. But Verstappen, I don't know how it happened. I was watching as they slowly chunked that time away, and it went 2 seconds, 1.5 seconds, 1, and then just 7/10 were in it when they went past that pit lane there. Verstappen closed that gap massively in the last couple of laps. Obviously, he's managed those tyres a lot better, and Noble was maybe pulling away a little bit and just not really getting the grip, I guess, and therefore Verstappen got up. But there's a huge possibility here that once Verstappen does finally pit, I'm not sure when that's going to be, because it looks like he's adamant to finish this race himself if he can. But once Verstappen pits, we may see that the Alpine has managed to take the McLaren, as Ryan now puts himself in the car. That's Ryan Neenan. He is Noble's teammate in the 1-2-3 there. So we'll see what he can do. If he gets a good outlap here, that's going to be essential, because he really wants to get back ahead of that Alpine. They do not want to come out behind the Alpine, because that's just going to cause all sorts of trouble and slow them down massively, especially if they can't get past. So it looks like Verstappen's going to peel into the pits now. We'll see whether his lap was fast enough compared to the McLaren's as to whether he's going to stay ahead or not. But very exciting in this pit window here of this part of the race. This is, of course, race 1 of the Season 5 GT4 Championship here. We've got 6 rounds, so nothing is obviously going to be dictated by this race. There is still plenty more action to come. You won't want to miss out on any of it, and as we saw from last season, anything can happen. We've had leaders swap every single race so far, but we could be about to see the first one here as Svenchik gets his first drive-through of the season in the Chevrolet. He's only just got in that.
Oh, yeah, Svenchek has inherited the 871 from Stevenson, and apparently, Tim, inherited 3 track limit warnings as well. That displays on the screen in the car, by the way. You can tell how many you have, even if your teammate got them for you. You know how many you have, and just a misjudgment there. How many times we have ever seen that? It's incredible, as this is the race off the pit lane. Killian Ryan Meenan taking over for Mike Noble has got back out in front in the lead of the race. The pit stop done for the Alpine. And trying to figure out where the Alpine is, in fact, the 747. Verstappen is still in the car. We saw him come down the pit lane. There must have been an issue with the driver swap. Certainly there had to have been an issue with the driver swap. Now, the only problem with that is in a normal race, that wouldn't be a problem because your drive time would be higher than your stint limit. Well, that's not the case for this championship, at least according to the documentation that we have up here in the booth. So, Verstappen may be violating that, and I believe, is that a disqualification or a massive time penalty, Tim?
That's a disqualification, I think. If you go over the driver's stint limit, I think it's drive through. It might be just a time penalty. I think Christian might have just said it's 130 seconds in the game, so we'll see how that all works out. But that is unfortunate there, because Verstappen did definitely, we watched him peel into the pit, so he was about to pit and make the driver stop. I don't know if maybe his teammate wasn't ready and he's just decided to stay in the car so that maybe they can stay ahead, but we'll see what happens there. Either way, post-race student, we'll find out after the race, but that is definitely not going to benefit the Alpine that is in P1 here. So even though he has managed to hold P1, that's not really what they want to happen right now. We'll see how that all unfolds here, but your current leader will be the McLaren, number 123, Ryan Meenam. He may be showing up in second, but he will actually be leading this race once the penalty is applied. So you've got the McLaren in first, the Mercedes at number 25, driven now by P. Vitt. He will be in second place. And then the Aston Martin 878, driven by Foch. He will be in third right now. So a bit of a mix-up in the top three. Honestly, I can't remember who was driving the Mercedes. Machuska and Fischer, of course. So Machuska and Fischer have both come out in their same order as well. So the Mercedes is still ahead of the Aston Martin there. But now it is Foch's turn to see if he can get through the Mercedes. He's dropped a little bit far back. We know that Fischer obviously had that incident and he dropped far back. But now it's about a 2.5 second gap. So we'll see what Foch can do. Maybe he can close it a little bit. Maybe he's going to just drift away a bit here. But either way, they will have the podium. And here is the rain. And looking at the weather forecast, it's going to get worse and worse and worse over the next 30 minutes. So we will see how this impacts the race. The track has already dropped down to fast. That was very, very quick. And the temperature will start to drop as well. So the cars are going to start sliding around at all the different angles. We have no idea how this is going to turn out. So some of the cars may start to struggle here. We know in particular that 304 Lawrence was originally driven by Billy Octane at BMW. They were really struggling in that first stint, so we'll see if they can keep it up in the second stint here, as it looks like there's a couple of other people who may have missed the pit window. Yeo hasn't pitted, Korea hasn't pitted, and then De Bont in the Chevrolet at the back. They've all not pitted, so it looks like something may have happened there in the pit stops. We don't know. Maybe the drivers weren't ready. Maybe something else has happened and this was all planned out. But either way, they have now missed the pit window. So some penalties will be handed out post-race.
I will tell you something other interesting is happening. Cramp and Heinke have come into pit lane as soon as it started raining. Both of those are AM drivers. The 7 and the 84 have come down pit lane. They are probably putting wet weather tires on the car, if I had to guess. Now, usually you wouldn't do that, but the track has went from optimum to fast to greasy. It's not to the point where you'd put wet weather tires on yet, but if they go ahead and they do that and they come back out, they may be an advantage over the 727 and the like. So this track is greasy. These cars are sliding around now. That was very fast indeed, the change, as Juan Macastro trying to get around Tom Bryant in the 24 Alpine now, and all over him, looking around the outside.
And he's still looking for the outside here. He's been pushed a little bit out, and obviously in the rain, that corner is very hard now. This isn't a simple move like Wolf Machuska did at the beginning, where you can just really power yourself around the outside at full speed. With the rain here and a greasy track now, so it's fallen very, very quickly. you really can't just power yourself around that corner. You will spin out and just get snaps of oversteer at the most random times. So you do have to be really careful. And it looks like Castro now, because of that, is going to drop back a little bit. So not within striking range of Tom Bryant, but there are so many ways to take that corner in the dry. And when it comes to the rain, there's only one way you can take it. So unfortunately, now that it is raining, especially whilst they've still only got the dry tyres on, you have to be that much more careful. So the ability to overtake has dropped even less now than it was before, and I'm just noticing that rain is getting worse and worse and worse. 30 minutes time, so we might just see it. It's supposed to be absolutely pouring it down. Do you think we're going to have to see them pit for wet tyres at some point? Because we can see now, I mean, the McLaren that's in the lead, he's just slid through that chicane.
Funny you should mention that, Tim, because as you might expect, I have been doing the maths. And the track very quickly went to greasy. It's not raining hard enough now to warrant putting anything other than a slick tire on the car, although it seems to be approaching a crossover point because these cars are nigh on impossible to drive right now. You can see this is Killian Ryan Meenan. They're in second place, but they're effectively winning this race. This is the car Mike Noble got out of. And look at just how much in the corners Killian is fighting this car. Now, if you know who Killian Ryan Meenan is, he's a champion driver many times over, fast, etc., and so forth. Esports champion. You get the gist. He has a very long resume, is what I'm getting at, and he's fighting the car there on the track as it's getting damp. So the point is, as Daly making a big lunge and a move over Will, and looks like that's going to stick for Jordan Daly, the Triple R Academy try hands, or is that try hards rather, not hands. He doesn't try hands, he tries hard, does Jordan Daly. And getting up into the 8th place position as Will has bailed in that 3 car down the pit lane as the track has gone damp. But to go back to your point for the 3rd time, Tim, I've been doing the math, and I think he will do it, and it's a spin. Crump has touched Gleason, and that's going to be a spin. Joe Gleason goes around. Cramp continues, and that was mega for the driver in silver.
Maybe the Porsche just misjudged how quickly that Alpine can accelerate, and the answer is not very quickly compared to the Porsche. Exactly. Wait. And that's the thing I was going to say. It's really exciting right now because half the cars are on wets. The other half haven't pitted yet. You can see some of them are dipping into the pits now. And that's basically the case of when was the right call to pit. I don't know who it was, but someone pitted very early on. I think that might have been the right call because they've just had time now.
It was the 7 and the 84.
It was. And they just... The problem is because the track is getting damp so quickly... God. That's the problem. You just, when the track is getting this damp really quick, you don't know what to do. And I don't know what you've just spotted, but I'm very excited to hear what you just found out.
I don't know what Mercedes that is. Is that the car Rubliar was in earlier? I think it is. That car was completely sideways behind Martin Lawrence. Like that, it looked like a Tokyo Drift exhibition.
Wow, that is, I mean... They need to pit. I think they probably realise that now.
Yeah.
And unfortunately for them, they are on the wrong half of the track to do that. So they need to somehow make it to the pit lane in one piece. But I mean, that's the problem is the cars now that are still on the dry need to get into the pits as soon as possible. As we see Vit now, this is Machushka's teammate P-Vit. He's decided that it's time for him to sap on the wets.
Does anyone chance it? Tim Peck, does anybody chance it? Stay out there on the slick tires. They will have, by the way, what I was doing the math, Martin Lawrence is in the pit lane, so is Phil Vitt. More cars coming to pit lane. So my question to you, Tim, is does anybody try and stick it out? Maybe a Daly, maybe a Tom Bryant try to steal a win here today. Jordan Daly in the pit lane. Can you try that knowing that it's going to rain hard with about a minute and a half, 2 minutes left? It's going to rain really hard. Do you chance it? Or do you have to come in?
Realistically, you have to come in. But here's the thing. So realistically, you have to come in because, I mean, you can see from just how much sliding and chaos there is that you can't drive currently on this track in the state it is on the dry tyres. I mean, Every single car is just slipping and sliding everywhere. We're going to watch the number 4 BMW of Stevenson, and he's going to opt into the pit now and put on the wets. It's the right call to make. The only person here who may be daring enough to not pit, who I think has actually just pitted now anyway, as I've said that, is Verstappen. If it's a 130-second penalty for not doing the mandatory driver swap, realistically, the only thing Verstappen can do right now is stay out and hope to God he can get some sort of gap building there. Just that he negates most of that penalty. I don't think it's really possible. If I'm honest, I think that's clutching at a lot of straws here, especially since you can see him now just really sliding around that corner, and he is opting into the pit, which I think is the smartest choice to make. Maybe he might swap driver now. Maybe he doesn't realise that he only had a 45-minute timer. We don't know what's happened. We'll see after he comes out of the pit lane, but we'll see how that all pans out. But Verstappen is realistically the only person there who I think should have risked that, and I don't really think he should have. I just think it would have been rather funny and entertaining if he did, to put it bluntly. But apparently there's a car risking it. I'm not quite sure who it was. Meenan, actually, the McLaren. It looks like, well, I thought we already saw him come into the pit, but it looks like he's risking it. So maybe he hasn't put on a wet pair of tyres yet, but awfully bold of them to risk it. I mean, actually, you got Meenan and Foch. They're still in second and third right now.
No!
That is not the... They need to pit. They might have missed their chance as well. So we'll see. There's 23 minutes of this race left. Realistically, do you think they can hold this gap? I believe Bryant may have pitted. He may not have. It's really hard to tell who has pitted here, but... Oh, I honestly, I think they just need to pit, but if they do try and risk this, I'm all for it. It's going to be so entertaining to watch. And I mean, you got a little snippet of what's come there. You're getting another snippet here as there is no grip. You can guarantee he just can't feel the car right now. He has no idea how these tyres are feeling. At this point, he's not even driving the car. He's just sliding around on basically an ice rink. So we'll see how that one pans out. But has the McLaren left it that little bit too late? Should he have pit when everyone else was pitting, just to ensure that he kept that lead? I'm thinking that might have been the right decision here, but with 23 minutes left in this race, you just don't know yet.
There's a lot of people in chat making a reference to this being a carbon copy of Sochi, the Russian Grand Prix this year, and it is very close indeed. And I do recall Lando Norris not winning that race. And remind me, what manufacturer did he drive for?
You're breaking my heart here. He drove a McLaren.
I'm just saying. Look, if anybody can do it, it's Killian Ryan Meenan. I'm fairly convinced Killian is not human. He's not a computer either because he can solve captchas, but he may not be human. And he's an excellent racing driver, and he may be trying to see where everybody... They may be running telemetry in the FFS racing camp. Nearly everybody else has pitted. If you're wondering at home how to tell between a rain tire and a dry tire, a dry Pirelli will have a yellow mark on the side of it that you can see even when it's moving. A Pirelli wet tire has no such marking, so it's just a black sidewall. Clearly, Martin Lawrence's car, black sidewall, wet weather tires. So we think everybody except Killian Ryan Meenan, Samir Foch, and Bryant have pitted in this race. So the top three cars, everybody else has come down pit lane. We expect they put wet weather tires on. The track has not gone wet. It is still damp. But like I said earlier, I did the maths, and the heavy rain will be here before the checkered flag comes out.
It will appear just before. I'm not sure how much of an impact it's going to have. Again, if it arrives with a minute or so to go, it's going to have a huge impact, especially on that last lap. And thinking of Russia, actually, that is all it takes is one lap for the entire race to be ruined. Obviously, we saw Norris just completely lose it on the corner. But we're going to watch now. You can see you can tell which cars have the wet tyres on compared to which cars have the dry tyres on, because the cars with the wet tyres are just making it look easy with the ones that are dotted around the pack. But that top five completely changed up in that pitting section. Verstappen is down to fourth, so technically he's still leading. Witt will be in second place if the three cars in the podium currently pit. So really it's a case of how quickly can Verstappen and Vic close this gap. They need to really close it quickly. I'm not sure how the timings are working overall. Usually when you've got people a lap down, it's hard to tell. But, oh, it looks like a huge send is happening here. Tom Watts goes down the inside of Hunt in the Ginetta and just... It looks more like he missed a braking marker now, and he is going to have to yield a position to Kampf, it looks like, too. So not the corner he wanted there, but that was a huge send, and well done to Hunt for not turning in there. That must have taken a lot to just really time that perfectly with when is it safe to turn in. And you do have to be so careful, especially with... And he's going for another send now! He's not learned from the last time. He's like, you know what? I want my place back. And he's just going to send it right up the inside of that first corner. And that time he does it successfully. But you can just see these cars are slipping and sliding everywhere. No one was ready for this rain, let's be real. I mean, no one thought it was coming.
0.0% chance of rain.
Oh, it's just... You can't have any less chance of rain than 0.0%. Let's be real. That's literally no chance. And somehow we have made it rain. And quite heavily at that. The track is still damp, but the cars are just struggling so much out there. I'm wondering as well, especially for the top three who haven't pitted, if the track gets worse, which inevitably it's going to get worse from this point here, they're only going to slide around more. And we saw how much that McLaren was sliding. Again, we can't tell what the timings are here, because 1 minute it's saying Verstappen's a lap behind Bright, and the next minute he's saying he's only 7 seconds behind. So until we actually watch the overtake happen, we have no idea where Verstappen is in relation to everyone else. And it looks like, well, I mean, the cars on the wet tyres are lapping significantly faster. Verstappen is lapping 1.8 seconds, I believe, faster than the leader is. So that is a huge difference there. And it's going to make all the difference in the last couple of laps as well, as we just see all of these cars, they're suddenly deciding to fight a lot more. It's like, oh, it's raining, let's start dive bombing each other. And you can see now, number 727 in the Aston Martin, he's gone for a move on the BMW, and they're both sliding around. None of them have grip, and it's constant switchback after switchback. The BMW is going, haha, look at my top speed, and then the Aston Martin's going, well, I can do this corner better than you. And it looks like, yeah, again, he's going to go for the switchback through into the first set of corners, and that is not the first set. That again is the middle bit of corners. It looks like he's going to send it around the outside. He's going to try and squeeze himself into a position. He's going to have the inside for the next corner. This is exactly where you want to be. He's forced his space. The BMW might look for the switchback here. He's not. He's just going to slot in behind. There's a nice long straight here, and if there's anything we know about the BMWs, it's how good they are in the straight. So you're going to see now just how much power this BMW has. You can see he's already gaining. He may not be in enough range to make the overtake, but he's certainly not out of this race yet. And again, he's already looking like he's about to get quite feisty in this corner. This is the amount of racing that they've just decided to have in the rain, and it's really surprising, because you'd have thought with the conditions getting harder, they'd have all driven a little bit safer, but no. They're taking this as, okay, everyone else is going to drive safe. I need to drive aggressive here and make up some positions. I was going to also mention, Demont in the Chevrolet down in 23rd has got the second drive-through of this race, so he's managed to find a little bit too much of those track limits there. He's also one of the cars to have not completed the mandatory pit stop, so that's not the ideal position for them here. This is the fight currently for the AM class win.
It sure is, and we talked about the 7 and the 84 being the first two cars out of the pit lane onto the wet tire, and it's worked for Crumpf, and for Crumpf, the problem is I assume they're going to get some sort of penalty for spinning out another car, but I'm not a steward, so I don't know. So maybe they weren't the reason the car went around, but one way or another, it is worked out well for them on the tires. Get out there first on the tires. You're the first on them, which is important, but even more important, you're the first to have heat in the tires. And now look at what it has done. It has got them a chance to win in AM. Meanwhile, we know Killian Ryan Meenan isn't on the slick, or isn't on the wet tire. I can tell you that for two reasons. One, his tires have the Pirelli sticker on them. Number two, he's steering right to go left. and they
I mean,
have a lead, but of course, Verstappen's not going to win this race regardless. Even if Verstappen does get there, which I don't think they will, eh,
no, he
Verstappen,
can't.
I think, might get disqualified because of there's two different penalties. There's the exceeding your drive time limit, right? And then there's not fulfilling two drivers in the car. And I think one of those actually disqualifies you. One of those gives you a 130-second penalty. Might be a double whammy for the 747 here, as Verstappen still continues to try and get as high as they possibly can, just in case they're not disqualified. I could be wrong about that, folks, but I know those are two different distinctions, and that's what makes it difficult. Juan Castro trying to get the 7th place from Vasiliev in the 112. And of course, both of these drivers on the wet tire, but even still sliding around, and almost looks like a beautiful dance in a way, doesn't it?
I mean, that's one way of putting it. They're absolutely sliding around everywhere. If that's Verstappen, yeah, it is Verstappen now taking over Tom Bryan. Not on the screen, sorry, that's what just happened on your screen. That means Vit isn't far behind, and we're actually going to see Castro now go for the move on the inside. Maybe Daly, is that? No, that's Vasiliev. He might get the switch back in the Aston Martin, but it looks like he might be a little bit far back. No, actually, he's got an amazing position here coming out onto the straight, so we'll see now whether he's just got that level of acceleration he needs. He's going to cut over Jesse Lee's favourite corner.
Kimi Räikkönen
Castro's
line.
gone really wide here, and he's just going to be able to slide himself back in safely. That is very close there and had the potential to be yet another incident that we've seen so many times so far.
Jordan
this race.
Daly in this picture now.
They need to be as careful as possible. Daly's making a move. He's going to be doing a lot coming into this straight, because I believe... Oh, he's in the Aston Martin. Sorry, I mistook it for the BMW. But these Aston Martins, they are all over the Mercedes right now. They're actually going to drop back a little bit here. So Castro is going to stay ahead for another day. But a brilliant overtake from him there. A little risky on the rejoin, but he managed to make it work. As Daly's going to go down the inside of Vasiliev. And it looks like he's going to get the move done. He's got it going through the first corner, and he's going to be able to keep Vasiliev. He's going to push him out to the outside and tuck into where he needs to be for the start of Maggots and Beckett. So that is how you overtake on the first corner. Daly is showing you that now, but going back to what I was going to talk about really quickly earlier, if Verstappen's got past Tom Bryan, which he has, that means that Vit isn't going to be far behind, and realistically now, Vit is the one who is looking to make up those positions in the last 12 minutes of the race. He is the one who could potentially take home a race win here. It's a huge gap he's got to close, but looking at the timings, he's taking out the best part of 2 or 3 seconds every lap from the leader, so it's not going to take a lot of laps for him to catch up to the McLaren in front.
I just think he's going to run out of time. I think there's, 30 seconds in between them and Killian Raikkonen, or... I think Killian had the right idea. I don't think you had to pit there. I think you could have stayed out, but I think the reason a lot of the cars didn't stay out is because they had an all-dry setup. They expected this to be a dry race, and without putting wet weather tires on the car, or groove tires in this case, I don't think they stood a chance. I think Killian is just toughing it out. And I mentioned earlier, I mean, how many times champion is Killian Raikkonen in ACC? I don't know, I lost count. So it could very well be that some people just felt like they didn't have a choice. And certainly the way that the dive bombs in the corners, the missing of the corners was going, it could have very well been the case. Jordan Daly, though, trying to get Castro. And, of course, after dispatching the 112, trying now to get 17 and get another position here. What a crazy race it's been. And folks, if you weren't here at the start, this race was very different indeed. Who would have called, first of all, Verstappen in that Alpine being that quick? We've got 2 Alpines in the top 5 here, okay? And they are there on speed and on merit. On top of that, we had rain that shouldn't have happened. I think Bart Macha said it best in chat. It's England. Even when it's not supposed to rain, it rains. Of course, Bart Macha not working for the English Tourism Board with that comment, but still to go 11 minutes of racing, and the track has now gone completely wet. That will do nothing but hurt the FFS Racing McLaren, which is currently leading this race. Let's go through the podiums of all 3 classes. Killian Raikkonen leads Samir Foch and leads Verstappen. Verstappen will not get to keep that position as it would stand if they finished here, which they don't, obviously. Tom Bryant in the 24 Alpine would finish third in this race. Will in the number 3 Aston Martin leads Silver over Nate McConnell in the 323. And Cramp now leads Hunt in the AM battle. Stevenson third in Silver, and the 727 of the 727 in third place in AM. So those are your podiums right now, but don't blink, you may miss something changing here as this track is getting even more wet and even less drivable. And now, I talked about earlier, using the curbs. I don't think I would suggest doing it now.
Yeah, I'd agree. I don't think now is the best time to be using those curbs. We talked earlier about just how much curb a GT4 can take. It's significantly more than any other car in ACC. And I mean, you were commenting on these corners in particular, how they just, the next one coming up, these GT4s just shoot right over the top of it without a care in the world. And they're going to go slightly over it. Not as much as they have been so far this race, but they can certainly take a lot of curb, these cars. But I mean, the way this has changed up has been absolutely insane. And you said at the beginning you weren't happy with the weather. It didn't represent Britain very well in your opinion. You thought,
I should have
oh,
shut my mouth, Timpek.
You should have. You were like, oh, it's just way too bright to be Britain. It's hot here. And then now the rain has come. So not to be disappointed. This is the British weather we were all expecting to see today. And I mean, we'll see if it happens again at Alton Park next week, because honestly, this could be the exact same weather scenario. But I do always love it when it begins to rain in the middle of a race, because there's no telling what will happen. And there's still no telling what will happen here. The McLaren is still in the lead. The Aston Martin of Foch is still in second place. Verstappen is closing that gap, but Verstappen's not the one who should be closing the gap. He is likely to get disqualified and a big penalty given to him in this race no matter what, because unfortunately he hasn't been able to fulfill the mandatory driver swap or the max stint time limit. So really, this is up to Vit now as to where he can find himself. He is the car to watch right now. He's on the wet tyres. Everyone above Vit, minus Verstappen, is currently driving on the dries. So Vit needs to show exactly what these wets can do and just try and close that gap a little bit more. As Jordan Daly is showing us what these wets can do on another pair of wets. He's looking for a way back through Castro, but Castro manages to just hold it in the middle around the corner. It looks like we're going to come into the chicane now, and Castro again is going to be that little bit further ahead of Jordan Daly. So he's got that good track advantage here, and Jordan's not going to be able to find a way through just yet. But these fights, they've been so ferocious, and you can see Daly is just slipping and sliding around. He's really starting to lose grip, as are a lot of cars here. And with a lot of fast corners, with the big curbs that they have, anything can go wrong in a second. If you touch that curb slightly wrong, if you're accelerating that little bit too much and two of your wheels go on the curb and the other two aren't, that could be enough to completely spin your car around and put you facing the wall. So that is not what you want to happen here.
A couple things. I wish you could hear our broadcaster, Christian Stricker. He is oohing and aahing along with us, and you may have caught me kind of giggling to myself occasionally. That's me laughing at the broadcaster, who is, you can't hear him, but we can hear him oohing and aahing every time a car dives down the inside, loses traction. Don't listen, we're all into it. We're all invested into it. And Nate McConnell, who I'm told he uses a gamepad to race on, that probably frustrates everybody behind him hearing that, no doubt. But doing well indeed, even on a gamepad, faster than I could be with a wheel, that is for sure. But coming down to the final 6 minutes of this race, the top few cars on the slick tire, everybody else on the wets, and the Hunter became the hunted today, as the rain that shouldn't have fallen has fallen, and it has changed the complexion of this race, the opening round indeed. And there will be a lot of drivers talking it over after this race and trying to figure out how it all went wrong, including the race admin, and trying to figure out how that happened. This has happened before, by the way, where a race has been set up with the impossibility of bad weather, and it still happened. It's happened one time previously.
Vit is closing on Tom Bryant. There is 10 seconds between them right now. We're going to get an updated result on that soon, but we do know that Vit is on that wet tyre and Tom Bryant is still on the dry, so we will see just how much of it is taken out Bryant here. It looks like another 2 seconds has been taken in just that sector alone. That's how quickly those times are updating. So Vit is about to put himself back on that podium. He's only 1 place off it. Verstappen, of course, is not finishing there, so we're just going to take him out of the equation for now. But Vit is looking to get himself back on that podium. He was originally on it, and obviously he opted to pit when Tom Bryant didn't. Bryant, maybe this hasn't worked out quite how he wanted for him, but a valiant effort at that. He might just make it in the time frame, as it looks like Daly here is going to try and find his way through Castro. He got a really good exit there, but Castro is just sat in the exact middle of the track, and there's no way for Daly to get through. So Daly is going to have to wait yet another lap before he can make that move again if he wants to make it happen there. But this corner, I'd say, is probably one of the best to try and make a move.
320 off.
I was just about to say,
Joe Gleason.
What is 320 doing all the way over there? How are they over there? Can they even... we can't even see them on the corner, so I'm not quite sure how they managed to find themselves over there. We are going to have a little bit of a replay here to
Joe Gleason in the Alpine.
What happened to Joe Gleason?
Oh no!
That is the incident we watched earlier where he spun out the Alpine before it was raining, but something has happened since and he has disappeared off to the track, and I think he's just disappeared out of the session completely. So I wonder what happened to him. We will try and find that out for you after the race, but for now the fights are starting. Vit has closed in on Bryant massively. He only has 3.5 minutes to find a way through here, but on the wet tyres, it should be easy enough. I don't want to make it sound too easy, but there shouldn't be too much of a competition here. Bryant is a brilliant driver, so is Vit, but the reality is one of them's on wets and the other's on dries, and it is pouring with rain. So I imagine the Mercedes will make very quick work of the Alpine here. But it's interesting. I was totally against the idea of just trying to hang out this race. I would have said you need to pit for wets. It's the only option. Ryan and Foch have made this work, and they don't look in danger at all of losing first and second there.
Yeah, I'm not really surprised. I thought one of the top runners might do it. I didn't know if Killian would do it. I definitely thought maybe Foch in the 878 would not come back down pit lane and do that, maybe try to steal a win. And Killian kind of went ahead and beat them to that strategy. Killian, of course, with a 24-second lead under no threat from anybody in the closing stanza of this race. I'm glad we have a week between now and race 2, because it is going to take a week to sort all of this out. Phil Vitt, by the way, trying to sort out Tom Bryant for what will effectively be 3rd place in the pro class, and gets it done easy peasy lemon squeezy around the outside on the front straight, and doesn't even have to contest it into the corners. That Alpine is struggling mightily. Phil Vitt is looking very imposing here in the closing stanza. By the way, heavy rain here imminent in the next minute or so. It will come a downpour right before the end of this race. Oh, and a contact there, maybe. Spin check. And of course, Vasiliev, as they try to race it out for the 9th place position. They're stuck side by side. This happens in GT4s more often than it does GT3s, and they will still be side by side, and you've got to have a lot of trust and some grip, as Vasiliev nearly loses traction on the inside, but ends up saving it, but passed on. It took him 5 corners, but give the position to Juraj Svinček in the Chevrolet.
He's just making the Chevrolet look easy, the same as Verstappen did last season, really. But that Chevrolet, you thought it was going to fall off. I thought it was going to fall off, and it just hasn't. It's done so well so far in this entire endurance race, and both drivers have managed to really capitalise off it as much as possible. So they've done really well here. Verstappen is going to push himself up into second place, it looks, and I think they're just probably going to be helped. I don't know what I'm saying. They're going to be helped through it. I mean, Foch doesn't have to defend anything here, and he can see that Verstappen hasn't done his mandatory pit stop. So, oh no, that's not what you want to happen. Verstappen has made contact with Foch, and that's not ideal at all. I mean, you can't really point fingers and blame at this point, but Foch didn't need to be in that situation. Granted, neither did Verstappen really, but honestly, I think Foch should just backed away. He had nothing to fight for there. Verstappen isn't a problem. Essentially, at this point, Verstappen's just that annoying person who's driving around with the wet tyres and going, haha, look how much faster I am than you. But
But by the way, I think I've worked out what's happened. It happened to several cars in this field. I'm being told that the ACC servers disappeared at some point during the duration of this race. Not specifically our servers, just all of them. Like the list wasn't populating. And I think maybe if some of these teams did not have their second driver in place in time, they may have been caught out by the ACC
no.
servers not showing up. That's the story I'm hearing from multiple sources of not being able to see the server population list. So I originally thought they were talking about us specifically. That's not the case. They're talking about ACC in general, and I think that's what's happened to the 747 and several other cars in this field too.
That makes sense, but then that begs the question of what do they do about it? I mean, Verstappen's going to get the automatic game penalty, I think, because I believe the game does hand out penalties if you don't fulfill the mandatory pit stop. By the way, this is the last lap that they're on now. I just thought I'd mention because that has crept up so fast for an 80-minute race. That's just suddenly appeared out of nowhere. But I wonder what will happen. Obviously, because that's not something that the drivers can really help. I mean, if you can't get in the server, you can't get in the server. So there's nothing they could have really done there. And I'm sure a lot of them won't be happy being handed penalties for things that weren't really in their control. But Verstappen's going to come across the line now. I think he's got one more lap in him because of his relation to the McLaren, which will be doing his final lap now. So Verstappen... Oh, no, they finished the race. So hang on. What order are they in? That's the McLaren. That is the McLaren that has just crossed the line. So that's McLaren finishing the race now. I am not okay. I cannot tell these cars.
I know you just witnessed something very strange. We all did, in fact. Killian Ryan Meenan for FFS Racing. Mike Noble qualified the car, started up front. They're going to finish there. They don't need no wet tires. Killian Ryan Meenan wins. Verstappen will finish second, but gets a 130-second penalty. Samir Foch, for boring but fast, comes across the line, finishes second in the pro class. And Phil Vitt, what a day. Spent a lot of time outside the top five, just barely inside the top five. They're going to get rewarded. Him and Wolf Matuszka, pink performance as well, with a podium in the first race. What a crazy day it was. And there were two different strategies, and both of them seemed to work pretty darn well. Phil Vitt in third, Tom Bryant in fourth place, and this man, Martin Lawrence, will round out your top five. Already crossing the line, Cramp in the number 7 Porsche has won in AM over Hunt in the 303, and Heinke in the 84. Used that early strategy. Cramp used it to win the race. Heinke used it to finish on the AM podium. Nate McConnell will come across the line inevitably and win in silver class over the number 3 Aston of Will, and Stevenson, the 4 BMW, will finish third in that class. The final couple of positions being sorted out. That car is Vasiliev in front of McConnell. That's not for an in-class position. He won't mind, as Nate McConnell has won in silver.
I stand corrected. I personally, at the beginning of the race, well, not the beginning of the race, but when we saw that whatever, I'd have said you absolutely should have pitted there. Turns out, you absolutely shouldn't have. Foch, who was teammates with Fisher, they were behind the Mercedes by a little bit of a significant margin there going into the pits. When the Mercedes peeled into the pits, they decided, okay, we want the wet tyres. The Aston Martin, on the other hand, was like, nope, we can deal with the rain, that's fine. And they finished with a 29-second gap between them. So managing to stick out on the dries was the call there. Tom Bryant as well managed to push himself right up through that order. I think when he came in, when he inevitably didn't come into the pits, he was probably looking at around 6th place, but he's put himself nicely into 4th there. So those drivers are obviously going to be very happy with their split-second choice to just stay out on track, suck it up, sort of just deal with it, really. Verstappen, funnily enough, he's only going to get a 130-second penalty. fall down to 13th. That's not as bad as I thought was going to happen there. So he's maybe a little bit happy that even though he is going to get that penalty, it's not the end of the world for him in the championship. We have seen bigger gaps get closed before. So it's not all over. And like we've said a million times, there's 5 more races. This is a 6-race season here. Anything can happen in that time. So we'll be at Alton Park next week. It's another British track, so we'll be expecting equally as weird weather, I suppose, and anything can happen with the weather there. Anything can happen on the track there. And we'll see you next week.
Yeah, big thank you to all of our partners that make this race and every race possible. If you haven't liked, subscribe, hit the bell for more racing action. We'll be back with you tomorrow night. Stewie, myself, and Ryan Mollison bringing you the Friday Championship. 75-minute GT3 races there. And, of course, on Monday, the return of the Porsche Cup. Jake, the Bosmeister Boswell, and Ryan Gill on the call for that race. And, of course, next Thursday, myself, Tim Peck, and Christian Stricker will be back with you for the second round of the GT4 Championship. And it's going to take just about that time to sort out what all happened here. My notepad is as full of information as it's been in some time. We wish you all a very good evening. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you next time.